York, we saw Jeff Immelt. Jeff Immelt and Malaysia goes back a long, long way. In 1996, I was a very junior. I think it was ISIS, or I had just left ISIS, and I was trying to arrange a call by Jack Welch, then CEO of GE, on Tun Mahathir Mohamad at the Willard in Washington, D.C. And as a result, you get to know them. But what do? You develop this relationship. State Department, these were congressional staffers that came out on an ISIS program in 1984. We got to know them, and lo and behold, they're all East Asia. Assistant Secretary of East Asian and Pacific Affairs, and when we went to visit them at the State Department, we didn't have to queue. They didn't even check our passports. We were whisked through, we went upstairs, we sat in there, and some of us were fortunate because we had lunch at the Benjamin Franklin room, it was the view of the White House. What is this about? Because at the end of the day, these personal networks will help you. Because guess what? The world is globalized, the world is so small, you want to do things. I was just setting up my first private equity fund, and in 1987, we hosted the Asia Society. It was the Williamsburg Conference in Kota Kinabalu. I got to know them really well. At one of the meetings of the Asia Society, by the way, I'm now a board trustee of the Asia Society, a very old friend of mine who's president of Kissinger & Associates got to know me, and he delivered 3 LPs for my first fund. In short, it made my life very, very easy. The same goes for Indonesia. You get to know them. We cannot be shy. It was Konrad Adenauer who said that having a thick skin is a gift from God. I noticed that younger Malaysians are shy, don't go out. Kadang-kadang ni kita ni macam katak bawah tempurung, jago kampung and all that stuff. At your age, I was carrying bags. I was telling them a story in the waiting in the room, and I said that at the age of, I can't remember how young I was. There were 134 of us. It was the 10th anniversary of Malaysia-China diplomatic relations. Tun Mahathir didn't go. It was a fasting month. It was led by Tan Sri Ghazali Shafi'i, the late Tun Ghazali Shafi'i. And out of 134 members of delegation, guess what number I was? 132. I was carrying bags. I was doing, and then bulan puasa, so I had to go at 3 o'clock in the morning. I had to go and knock on every door. Tan Sri, Saho, Datuk, Saho, Datuk Sri, Saho. And I had to do all those things. But guess what? It put me in an incredible position. With, guess who they are? KSU, KSP, ministers, potential ministers to be and all that. And that's networking locally. And then the Chinese networking. And then, they were housing the Cambodians. And then there was a Cambodian networking as well. Yeah? Singapore, we have, back to Indonesia. Indonesia, we hosted the KLBC. Who are we? Very small, 100 people. We hosted Pak SBA and half the Indonesian cabinet. It's never been done before. Singapore, Lee Kuan Yew came up in June 2009, and he asked for KLBC. There were 15 of us. We know every single minister. When they hosted APEC, we went down. During APEC, nobody does anything because the whole country was busy with APEC. We had the Deputy Prime Minister, we had Minister Taman, we had every Deputy Prime Minister, Teo Chee Hean, every one of them. It's about networking. It's about getting to know them and building it and keeping it, sustaining it, yeah? Finally, Thailand, again, Kun Abisit, then former Prime Minister of Thailand. 25 years ago, we all played tennis in Phuket, we played tennis in Bali. And then suddenly when KLBC was in Bangkok, the governor of Bangkok, who we played tennis with, hosted us to a massive dinner. Kun Abisit, who had a parliamentary session, said, KLBC, please come to the parliament, and we'll do this for you. And Bangkok Bank, again, another good friend of mine, we played tennis again. And the Bangkok Bank literally closed the road leading to the bank, had police escorts, got us up there, and surprised, lo and behold, the finance minister of Thailand came and spoke to us. So these are the kind of things that you realize, that younger Malaysians, what am I? Am I Generation X, I think, right? You guys are all Generation Y. If you're born after 1984, I guess you are. We are a small country. And in 1981, when Prime Minister Tun Mahathir Mohamad became Prime Minister, one of the things he said was, we are a small country, but we have a role to play. So, ergo, therefore, ladies and gentlemen, young corporate Malaysia, go forth, travel, engage, discover, and learn. Build networks, build goodwill. Do it now. Then return to Malaysia, wiser, sharper, and equipped to drive your future and the future of this nation. I hope, in my own way, that I have aroused your intellectual interests and trust that you will look beyond the shores of Malaysia to develop your future and therefore contribute to the development of Malaysia. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you very much.
Thank you, Datuk Rohana, for giving us a brief overview of what young corporate Malaysians should do in terms of networking. I think I've known Datuk for 4 years now, since I came back from my studies in the UK. And I think Datuk Rohana has taught me a lot about how networking, I think a lot of us here, we've got the know-how, but the know-who is also very important for young Malaysians who wants to build up a career. And I think building a career in Malaysia is one thing, but also to have exposure outside Malaysia is another thing as well. So I think maybe we can have a quick Q&A to those of you who like to ask questions on China and India. Okay, we've got 4 mics, so maybe you can queue at the mics and then we have Imran at the back.
Assalamualaikum, Datuk Rohana. Okay, my question is, in between the trifecta of India, China, and Indonesia, how does Malaysia position itself? Our multiculturalism is our biggest asset, as you said, but in which industries are we most primed to leverage ourselves off? Thank you.
Yeah, maybe we have another one. Yeah.
Datuk Rohana, I'm David Sim, Harvard Club Malaysia member.
You're not YCM, are you?
Yeah. Am I right to say that if we want to do business with India, China, Indonesia, we should go through your Kuala Lumpur Business Club?
Okay, maybe you take another one.
Yeah, sure.
Good morning, Datuk. My question is, what advantage do our young corporate Malaysian have as opposed in working overseas like China, India, and Indonesia?
Let me do the easy one first. No, you do not go through the Kuala Lumpur Business Club to do business in India and China. Absolutely not. But we can be helpful. We can be incredibly helpful to go into China and to go into India. In fact, we've got it online for both countries next year. In fact, Hanoi is also online. Indonesia, it was so important to us, we went twice, and Pak SBA came once. So quick answer, no. But there are various channels, various organizations for you to do that. You know, Malaysia is placed in very, very good position. Now, I'm going to answer the last question. What was it? What was the opportunity? Okay. You know, if you look around this room, right, we have been incredibly successful since 1957. We've gone through a lot. And we are in a position where we're not a threat to anyone. Are we a threat to China? Are we a threat to India? Are we a threat to Indonesia? No, we're not. And this is where, you know, if you look where you're coming from, and we look at where we've been and what we do. I mean, let's not, you know, China. What was Tun Razak thinking about in 1974 in setting up diplomatic relations? Not only did he set up diplomatic relations with China in 1974, he set up relations with, guess what, North Korea. And 1970, what the hell are you doing with North Korea? But we did that. We did that. He saw the potential. Don't forget, we just came out from confrontasi with Indonesia. The Chinese Communist Party was supportive of the Malayan Communist Party and the Indonesian Communist Party. And the right thing to do was, this is all over, we need to move forward. Guess what, trade is going to be so important. Go to China. And India, we established diplomatic relations in 1957. Indonesia was one of the first countries we did that in 1957 on the 10th of October. And our first ambassador was Tan Sri Senu Abdul Rahman. So we're not a threat to anybody, and we use that advantage to build. I mean, look at India, our big boys are there already. It's difficult, it's complicated, and it's not easy. China, I have news for you. I mean, you know, we've got guys who are successful there. We've got the Kwok family, we've got the Parkson group, and we've got many, many others. But it continues to be very difficult. Singapore thought they were smarter than most people, got their act together, they went off and they developed Suzhou. And lo and behold, the very next day the Chinese got together and built Suzhou 2. and they had problems. But we should be able to have the staying power, we should be able to sustain and see this. Now, where we come from is our multiculturalism. It's where we're not seen as a threat to any one of them. And basically, our political leadership has embraced China and India from day one. Every one of you, I can't remember what year it was when the Chinese Malaysians were allowed to go to China. My father was the director of Special Branch, and when he retired, he couldn't, and his daughter went to China in 1984. But, you know, we have this advantage of knowing the culture, of knowing the people, how they do things. It's different, huh? But we have that advantage. In India, the same thing as well. Now, I've been told many, many times that you cannot find roti canai in India because it's a Malaysian thing. But you know, when you do that, what's important is that we're not a threat, number one. Number two, politically, okay, we have been very, very successful in embracing and engaging all three countries. And number four, basic economics. Number three, basic economics. We do trade with them many, many years ago, and we continue to emphasize on this country. And finally, I think it's people to people. I think we are charming, we are friendly, we are quite clever, and we do all these things, and we're not doing enough. And again, if I can be very, very bold, Generation Y is not as adventurous as Generation X. Opportunities, again, the same thing. I mean, if you look at where we are in Indonesia, the banks, plantations, I'm looking at Datuk Wira Faisal, huge auto industry in Malaysia. This guy could probably be big in India. He could be as big in China. And we have that opportunity. And this, you're talking about government hand-holding us. Can you imagine if they were to do much more, we can be very, very successful. I wonder if I answered all three questions in that regard.
Okay, maybe take another one.
Okay. Good morning, Dato', and good morning, Firdaus. My question is very simple. Earlier, Dato', you mentioned about the possible threats from China, i.e. the Suzhou Technological Park incident. It also reminds me of a few cases in China where we are not a threat to China, but China is actually a difficulty for us. So for instance, a lot of SME corporations who tried to venture into China found it very difficult because of a few reasons, namely bureaucratic red tapes, corruptions, whatnot. Earlier, Dato', you mentioned about how big corporations or big business delegations can actually thrive their way through China's barrier. But what about the SMEs in that sense? How are young corporations, young people like us, where do we position ourselves in terms of playing with this big player? Thank you very much.
India, the honest answer, we have not done enough, Malaysia. There was a major economic policy by the Singaporeans in the late 80s and early 90s where they have this third, spread your wings. And primarily they were targeting India. China, they've started slightly earlier. We have not done enough with regards to India. We have not taken advantage. It's not just about multiculturalism. It's about, complementing each other's economy, various sectors and all that. I'm not sure. I guess I understand a little bit as why we're not doing enough in India. When we started off back in the 60s, we're looking at our commodities, and then we had this incredible manufacturing thing where people came into Malaysia and they set up, Motorola's of the world, the Intels, and all the huge companies in Penang and in Shah Alam and in old PJ. They were all doing this. And we were very comfortable being the preferred destination of a lot of multinational companies. And we were very, very comfortable back in the early 60s. I think Motorola first set up in PJ, at Sunway, where the flyover is. I remember that as a young girl, was there. And at that point in time, they were very happy that they were hiring about 6,000 Malaysians. So we had this phase together with Maida, Miti, and all that, where everyone came to us. Why? Because we spoke the English language, because politically we were stable, because we had a skilled labor force. With all these things, India then was still a bit of a chaos, and so was China. So there was that comfort level that we built around us. And sort of say, well, our FDI is coming in, we don't have to do very much, and, we are clever people, Indonesia, India and China. That comfort level got us into a little bit of trouble. And as a result, we couldn't bring ourselves to the next stage of manufacturing. And now you find that all the MNCs are going to China, going to Cambodia, going to Vietnam, and going to Indonesia. If I were to buy a Nike, it's probably made in, I don't know, Surabaya or Bandung. If I were to buy Polo or something, you know. So we need to be hungry again. And this is an opportunity, while the Prime Minister is doing tremendous work with regards to transformation, PTP, EGT, ETP, NKRA, whatever, we've got to understand that we should also become key investors. And that's, I think, happening very, very slowly. But to answer your question, we're not doing enough, we're not thinking enough about how important India is. Again, when I say all these things, I don't mean go in tomorrow and do things. These are difficult economies. One is 1.2 billion, one is 1.3 billion, and they've got United States, Europe, they've got Japan, they've got Singapore, they've got everyone looking at them. So you've got to challenge, you've got to be the best to get in there. We've been very successful in China. We have been quite successful in India. It poses a lot of problems. My company lost about 12 million trying to develop a project in Hyderabad, but we are hunkering down and we're trying to do the best that we can. Government should talk to each other and help us out, but again, you need to understand. This is why I say, go out there, travel, get to know. This is what Lee Hsien Loong meant, you know, travel and discover and learn and speak their language. You know, I speak Malay. I am Malay. I speak bahasa Indonesia. Kalau saya ngomong dengan orang Indonesia, ya mereka senang sekali. Wah, ibunya bisa ngomong bahasa Indonesia ya. And they cannot understand why we speak Malay to them. They can't understand our Malay.